Okay, excellent. Well, David, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today. Maybe if you could give us a little bit of background just about yourself, how you came into the industry and how you joined Kuya.
Sure. So I was doing a master's degree in geology after doing a bachelor in engineering, and I really liked the stock market. So I ended up getting a job on Bay Street, like more or less right out of school when I graduated from my master's degree, and I started as an equity analyst. Which was, it's a great way to get introduced to the industry because, you're meeting all sorts of CEOs and networking and, finding out how these companies run, how they do things well, how they do things poorly. And, and so that was my kind of my start. I basically have been involved in some sort of investment management, buy side or sell side, up until I started Kuya a few years ago. So I kind of went out on my own around 2016 and about looking at projects to invest my own money in. And I, found the Bethania project with the help of my co-founder. And we ended up starting the company in 2017 to to basically acquire a majority stake in the project at the time in a joint venture kind of structure with the former owners. And that's kind of how Kuya started in late 2017. And we were private for 3 years, ran it privately, raised money privately, and then took the company public in 2020.
Okay, fantastic. Sounds like you got a lot of experience on both sides of the aisle, I guess, in
Yep.
terms of the finance perspective and also your geology background. Tell us a little bit more about the early days of Kuya. In terms of you said that initial kind of identifying of a suitable project. How did
hmm
that come about?
Well, at the time, I have to admit, I was pretty commodity agnostic. I just wanted to look for really good resource projects, mining projects to invest in, and however, that being said, I've probably spent 80 to 90% of my career in precious metals. I was a gold and silver analyst specifically. And then when I got into portfolio management, you end up investing in a lot of gold and silver companies as well, mostly gold. But so I felt really comfortable with the precious metal space, just, understanding what the value proposition is. And what I saw with the Bethania, mine at the time was a mine that had a lot of really good potential, but was undercapitalized. And of course, the first thing you think undercapitalized, well, maybe we can, take it public one day and, bring more capital, better access to capital to this project. But specifically, what I mean is there was no, exploration, what we would consider to be exploration done. They were basically following veins. And they were pretty successful at doing that. They had some very good years where they made money. They did 6 kilometers of workings in the veins over about 40 years of the mine on and off. So there's a lot of data to analyze when we walked in, even though it was a private company. And we saw huge exploration potential with these veins being open along strike and at depth. And basically no drilling or modern exploration done. And also, we saw no technical issues that would prevent the mine from going back into production. So we started very, very early on, very early days when we were private, permitting a mill, because the site's never had its own mill. They were always toll milling at
Okay.
other mines, which there are plenty of in central Peru where we are. So we permitted that, and actually that's I would say one of our bigger accomplishments as a company. From start to finish took about 3.5 years, including going through COVID, which were there was some delay there. But we got a new mill fully permitted, which is in Peru, which is a tremendous accomplishment.
Yeah, no small feat. Could you tell us maybe about some of the challenges overcoming that you kind of overcame in that process? And I mean, you mentioned the COVID disruption as well. How did that affect the operations down in South America?
Well, Peru got hit extremely hard by COVID, actually, probably one of the worst in the world in terms of infections and how it shut down the country. So it definitely affected us in 2020, mostly 21. Um, you know, to be honest, as a private company, I think the biggest challenge was raising capital. Um, the um, yeah, it's difficult to raise capital when you're private. Unless you're in a rip roaring bull market, which we have not been. We haven't seen that for probably 10 to 15 years by now. So
Yeah.
so it was a tough market. 2017 was not, 2018 a little better, but still difficult. And we were able to kind of scratch and claw our way to keep good standing in the joint venture, continue to de-risk the project, get work done, add value, and we were fortunate that we timed the go public transaction quite well. We were able to raise enough money to actually buy out the former owners completely. It was originally contemplated to be an 80-20 joint venture. And that's definitely made our lives a lot easier, just to be able to control the thing full stop. So, those are probably the biggest challenges. I mean, permitting is a challenge, but nothing,
Yeah.
it just, if you keep at it, and have good people on the ground, I think you can get it done. That's been really the secret to our success so far, is to have a really strong local team. My co-founder and our COO, Christian Aramayo, lives down there, and based out of Lima, and so having senior management down there is a big bonus, a big advantage for us. And I think that's it's if you have that, and they're hardworking, motivated to get things done, I think you can get things done, like permitting, where
Yeah.
you've got to be constantly pushing on outside bodies to to look at things, to analyze things, to review things, to sign papers, etc. So a lot of working that, but we got it done.
Yeah, excellent. So, I mean, it sounds like having a team on the ground in Peru is obviously a huge asset. And when I have these conversations and speaking to both CEOs of juniors and investors in the sector, the two things that they really keep a close eye on tend to be geology and management team. Is it a management team who has experience in the sector, who have a good track record? Wondering if you could speak to how the team at Kuya was assembled, and maybe some of their experience.
I mean, it started with Christian and I met Christian actually when he was working with Kinross in Toronto. And he came from a bigger company with a senior management position, working all over the world. Just happens to be Peruvian, which was our good fortune. And sometime after 2014, moved back to Peru. Was based out of there, and then we sort of got reconnected to look at projects together. And actually, before we decided to go forward with Bethania, we looked at other projects in Colombia and Brazil, and Peru together, and just felt like Bethania was by far and away the best one, and had so much better potential. So that's sort of how the origins of the company. And then we've been able to build a really good team in Peru. Permitting has been a big focus for us really since the very early days. So having people with a legal background, with permitting background on our staff full time with Kuya has been a tremendous advantage, and they've done a great job. Peru is a country that has a very sophisticated mining code. Mining is a big industry there, and they regulate it quite tightly. So having, people internally, not always having to rely on external lawyers and external consultants, I think has been a huge advantage for us. So and then when we went public, we were connected initially with Quentin Hennig and a team that he was working with out of Vancouver, and they've been great sort of on the corporate development side, to help me build the company now as a public company. Yeah, I mean, we're the management team's been working together great. We're small but mighty, I would say.
Excellent. So, picking up on, I guess, maybe the other factor that usually the bigger determinant of success, but your properties.
Hmm.
Tell us about the work that has been going on there, and you know, when investors can expect news. I know you put out some preliminary kind of photographs of assays
Hmm.
recently. So talk us through that process.
Sure. So we actually have two projects now. So we started with Peru, and that's still our flagship project. It's by far the most advanced project. It's something that could go into production in months, once everything is sort of all set with the market and some of the the corporate the corporate development deals that we need to do. But we're very close on that. So, um, so in terms of Peru, I'll just start with Peru. There are other projects in Northern Ontario, but starting with Peru, our the exploration work that we've done to date focused initially on around the mine workings. So we really had in mind we wanted to make a mine plan, and so we did the vast majority of our drilling around the mine workings, and we were able to define a very nice resource that was bigger than we expected, and we haven't drilled very deep yet. We've only gone about, in terms of our resource block, we've only gone about 50 meters below the lowest mine level, and then
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the resources is in other veins that are above the lowest mine level. So basically in unmined
Yeah.
areas of the mine. So the total that we have right now, indicated plus inferred, is about 14 million ounces, and then we've been able to, since the resource came out, which is a little more than a year ago, we've been able to make some new discoveries on surface. So we've done some good work on basically an extension to the Bethania mine off to the east, which we call a hilltop zone. We've made some actually spectacular discoveries there. Our highest grade surface sample is from a vein that we discovered there called the Santa Elena vein. So, which ran 91 ounces per ton silver at surface and
Wow.
5 grams gold. And then there was another sample in that same vein that was like 11 grams gold, but lower silver. So it's actually unusually high gold. Plus we have the high silver there, which is
Yeah.
a very nice vein. And then there's several other parallel veins right close by to Santa Elena as well that are well mineralized. So it looks like we've got another zone there that probably connects back up with Bethania off to the west. And then we also we've been accumulating land around the mine
Mm-hmm.
for the past few years as well. So we went to one of our other properties that's just 3 kilometers to the west called Carmelitas, and we've done sampling in two different areas. One is an old mining area. One is a new area, an artisanal mine that we knew about. One is a brand new area that we didn't know about, and we've made discoveries and sampled veins on both areas. So in total now, with the surface work that we've done in the last year, we've expanded the strike length of Bethania, or of the project, in terms of these mineralized silver veins, from about 500 meters, which is our current resource,
Yeah.
to about 2.3 kilometers. So almost 5x. Between the three different zones. And then as well, it's not, we haven't drilled very deep yet either. And I think the main
Mm-hmm.
Bethania zone is open at depth. Some of our best drilling that we ever did was the deepest holes there. High grade silver with other, with lead and zinc in some cases. So we've got something that's going to be deeper. It's going to grow with the strike length of the other veins. There's probably other veins that we haven't even discovered yet, because there's a lot of land that we have still not
Yeah.
explored. So I think that project's going to get orders of magnitude bigger in time. It'll take years. It's not going to happen right away. But we've got tons of drill targets, lots of resource expansion potential there, and I would say it's kind of low hanging fruit kind of stuff. It's not
Mm-hmm.
stuff where we have to take a big risk. But we can probably plan a drill program and be pretty confident about how much resource we can drill. So that's Peru, and then in 2021, we made an investment to acquire some land in Northern Ontario in the Cobalt Camp,
Yeah.
which we like for its silver potential. And then we've been expanding that land package over the past 2 years, to the point now where we've got almost 18,000 hectares across about a 30-kilometer north to south band of properties, some of which are very kind of more advanced, covering old mines, and then some of which is really grassroots kind of elephant hunting new targets. And we really started our first significant drill program this quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of our first holes that we drilled, we made a brand new discovery. So actually in a new area that we certainly never drilled, called Campbell Crawford. And the photos that you're referring to, when we're pulling that core and logging the core, you see a vein there with massive amounts of visible silver. And so it's something that was quite material. We felt we needed to put that out in the market and let people know that we actually hit the target. That's a classic cobalt style vein that we hit, with mineralization in the wall rocks as well, which is silver mineralization in the wall rocks as well, which is cool because that expands the amount of volume of potential mineral resource that you could have, or mineralized material. And so it's a really exciting discovery, and we've continued to drill there. We're liking what we see, it's as obviously Peru is more advanced because it's an asset that could go into production more or less immediately. But certainly from a strategic and corporate point of view, it would be very nice to have a second project coming along behind Peru, behind Bethania in Canada, where we all know that Canadian mining projects tend to be valued at a premium to other countries. There's good mining culture here, and it is considered to be lower risk. So from a portfolio point of view, having a project in Canada, I think, is fantastic for our shareholders, and we're really excited that we've been able to deliver on it, this year.
Yeah, incredible. Sounds like there's maybe exciting news in the pipeline. Can you tell us maybe when investors can expect to get updates on things like the assay results that you said are being processed?
Right. So with that silver vein, our what we're calling the discovery hole, we did a series of rush assays there, and those could be back very soon. In fact, they might even be out by the time this podcast is released. So that's coming soon. That'll be the next news release, I would imagine, from the Silver Kings project. Then we'll do all the assaying and for the rest of the holes, basically the rest of the whole program. And I would expect there's not a big backlog right now. It's the lab time is pretty good right now, so I would expect that we could have that late April, potentially, if not early May. And then, from there, I think we can start to make some pretty strong observations as to what we have hit there. I think you'll find that we'll be able to identify multiple mineralized veins, not just the discovery hole, but other ones as well, because these veins in the Silver Kings or in the Cobalt Camp tend to occur in clusters.
Yeah.
Once you get into a cluster, you're going to hit multiple veins, and that's what we're seeing in the core. So I think we'll be able to talk more about that and also give more guidance about where we take the project in the near future.
Okay, sounds very exciting. So I guess beyond those near-term drill results, looking a bit further ahead, what would you say? The 5-year vision, say, for Kuya Silver. What does that look like to you?
Well, we'd like to get Bethania into production later this year, and how that's going to start is we can start toll milling, basically just like the previous owners were doing, and that allows us to essentially get all the mining activities going.
Yeah.
And start ramping up production as well. because we're going to produce more. Our plan is to produce significantly more underground tonnage than the previous operators were doing. But we'll start small and we'll ramp it up. So we can do that this year. In terms of the 5-year vision, I would say the mill is built at Bethania.
Mm-hmm.
It's been running probably for a few years already, and we're already doing an expansion there. Maybe even completed the first expansion at the Bethania mill, because we permitted it in a way that would be, low capex, easier to permit, easier to build for us, given that we're a small company. But I think given the exploration potential there, we're going to justify a 2 to 3x in terms of the mill size, either in one or more expansions. So I think we'll be done one of those expansions, and as well, what we have to do obviously to justify an expansion is do a lot more exploration.
Yeah.
So that is going to happen in the next few years as well, and I think we'll have a significantly bigger resource because we'll be able to drill Bethania at depth, along strike, Hilltop Zone, Carmelitas Norte, potentially new discoveries outside of those 3 areas. So I think that's coming, that's in the pipeline. And then I think with the Silver Kings project in 5 years, I would like to have, definitely one of our targets, whether it's Campbell Crawford, North Drummond, which is another target we've talked about as well, or maybe both, have resource estimates, have mine plans, have them permitted, and potentially started mining there. We actually have a former mill site as part of our property package there,
Okay.
so that would be a logical place to build a mill again if or when we need one. And again, I think the strategy with Silver Kings is to start kind of smallish with a mill that would be, a few hundred tons per day, definitely, 500 or less, let's say. CapEx, in today's dollar terms, 20 million or less, in that order of magnitude. And then we can ramp it up as we get exploration success.
Okay. Well, that sounds very exciting and definitely a story to keep an eye on. I guess, just to close out, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would want to share with the investors who use our platform?
Well, actually, I mean, it's probably worth summarizing like what Bethania and Silver Kings both in production would look like.
Yeah. And
of course, that says nothing for making another acquisition, which we could easily, I think, do in 5 years' time. But with just those 2 projects that we own today, with our current PEA that we put out last year, and then assuming some reasonable expansion to that in a second phase for Bethania, and then starting some production at Silver Kings, which we know is going to be very high grade. So even if the tonnage of the mill is small, you can produce a lot of silver with the grades that you get in that camp. So I think we'd be a very significant, on the order of 3, 4, 5 million ounce per year, maybe more, just with those 2 projects going. And low costs at both, which is important. So I think that that would make us there's almost nothing comparable to that right now in the space. Most silver guys, when they get that big, they diversify into gold or whatever. But when you look at the past history of really successful silver mining companies, they build themselves up with 2-3 million ounces at a time. They don't start off with 10 or 15 million ounces, big mega project, $1 billion capex, et cetera. Yeah. That's really, really tough. It takes a long time, a lot of dilution to finance that. So the guys, that I think we're following in their footsteps, Pan American, First Majestic, Endeavor, et cetera, they built themselves with more modest acquisitions and smaller production, but it adds up over time. And that's really, that's it. That's really the way most silver mines occur, is these high grade veins, whether it's Mexico, Peru, Canada, somewhere else. Um, it's just sort of the way Mother Nature has placed silver in our in our crust. And yes, there are exceptions. There are big low grade silver deposits out there, but the vast majority of them are like these high grade veins, which really lend themselves well to these smaller, but very low cost production scenarios. So I think it's a great business to be in, and I think we're in a good spot. We've got two fantastic assets, and no matter what else happens in the market, having the assets, owning them 100% is something that makes us really special.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think that's a very positive and exciting note to end on. So, appreciate you taking the time to come in today, and it was great to chat about Kuya Silver.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.